Howdy, let's talk about strategic groups. A strategic group is a set or group of companies within an industry that are the most similar to each other. Strategic groups are important to understand because they are the companies that are most likely to be similar in their resources, capabilities, and strategies. They're also likely to be the strongest rivals with one another. To illustrate what a strategic group is and how we can kind of understand them, let's talk about the restaurant industry. So we could start by segmenting restaurants into different types, say fast food versus sit-down restaurants. And of course, we could go a lot deeper than that. So let's go ahead and take it a level deeper. What if you're just going for lunch and you want something fairly quick? Well, maybe you want to go to a fast casual type of a place where it's going to be pretty good food, quality. You're probably going to walk inside and you might have a place to sit down, but it's probably not a place where you have a waiter come to you. You could also consider fast food, the type of place where you are likely to see a drive-through window, where people really expect something cheap and quick and out the door. Of course, between fast food and fast casual, you're likely to see a difference in quality of food, speed or efficiency of service, and also, and certainly, the quality of that food. So now let's go a little bit deeper just within fast food. And let's even go deeper and just say we're going to talk about places that sell burgers. I want to take two different strategic groups and compare a little bit of what we might see at each of them. The first group, I'm going to use companies to help to illustrate this. So think of a company like Five Guys, or In-N-Out, or Whataburger, if you're familiar with Texas, and think about those types of companies and the quality that you would expect there. Now compare those companies that provide things a little bit more with quality, a little bit higher quality ingredients, and then look at Wendy's, McDonald's, and Burger King. Now I would put them in probably the lowest tier. They might not like me to say that, but it's the reality. You go to a Wendy's, a McDonald's, or a Burger King because it's likely the cheapest option. It's also likely the quickest option. You're going to see the most standardized products in those places. So when we started off with restaurants, it's any place that you could go and have a ready meal or a ready-made meal prepared for you. But then when we go down and get a little bit deeper, we can get down to very fine-grained groups such as the cheapest 3 fast food chains that most of us are familiar with. Within a strategic group, we are likely to see companies with similar strengths and weaknesses, similar operations, supply chains, markets. Really, there can often be very little difference to the outside observer on what companies look like within a strategic group. I want to go with one more example. This time, computer memory. I used to work in the computer memory industry. I was in finance strategy, so I'm not an engineer, but it was a really interesting industry to be in. See, in the computer memory industry, specifically DRAM, dynamic random access memory, there were 2 strategic groups at the time that I was working in that industry. I want to show you those here. So there's a group of these companies that includes Samsung and Micron, Hynix, that are technology developers. They are the ones with the big R&D budgets. They're coming up with the new cutting-edge technology. These companies made a lot of their profit or created a lot of their value by developing the new technology and being at the forefront of the technological curve. You'll also see this other group of companies. These companies were known as producers. They did not develop their own technology. They licensed it from the developers. Because they licensed that, they might be a generation or so behind, but they really just focused on efficient, low-cost production. These 2 groups operated differently from one another, and there was a relationship within and across those based on how those companies would interact. Of course, a developer would look at those other developers as very strong strategic threats. But a producer is not really a strong strategic threat unless they're tied to a strong developer. Once again, the resources, strengths, weaknesses, capabilities within strategic groups are most similar to the companies within that strategic group. They will differ across strategic groups. And this means that rivalry is strongest within the strategic group. It's important to get to know your strategic group so that you can understand your strongest or top competitors. So what strategic groups are in your industry? How would you categorize those companies? How would you group them together? Is it the same if you look nationally versus locally? You might be in an industry where your strategic group that you're most concerned with is really just local. And even if you do have some national competitors. But I want you to break that industry down and look at those strategic groups and describe how those companies interact with each other. Thanks for joining today. Take care.